This is Toothless as a tiny baby dragon, and this is Toothless as a gigantic flying creature ruling the skies. And today, I'm going to see what would actually happen if you tried to raise Toothless as a pet from a harmless little baby to something that might become completely impossible to control. Honestly, this might be the worst decision I've ever made. But let's start from the very beginning, right now. Toothless is about the size of a small cat. Miniature wings, tiny claws, huge curious eyes. And at this moment, this is the smallest, cutest, and easiest he will ever be to handle. He's sleeping right now, so let's wake him up. Okay, yeah, he's definitely awake. At this age, Toothless is surprisingly gentle. So the first thing I wanted to find out was just how friendly he really is. I started by giving him a few toys. At first, he didn't really understand what they were. He sniffed them, tapped them, and then immediately tried to bite one, which honestly is a good sign. Then I did something I'll probably regret later. I offered him my finger. Luckily, his teeth are still pretty small right now, but that's definitely not going to stay that way. Since Toothless is still a baby, he needs to eat constantly if he's going to grow properly. So I decided to test what kind of food a baby dragon actually likes. I started with fruit. Then I tried something a bit heavier, and finally something I probably should never feed a dragon. He loved it. At this point, Toothless was eating several times a day, falling asleep everywhere, and following me non-stop. If I stopped walking, he stopped too. If I sat down, he sat right next to me. Which sounds adorable, until you realize he's getting bigger every single day. Even though he was still small, Toothless couldn't just sleep anywhere. So the next thing he needed was his own place to rest. I set up a small bed with a blanket, and honestly, I didn't expect him to use it, but he did. Over the next few days, Toothless started acting like the house belonged to him. He explored every corner, climbed onto furniture, and discovered places he absolutely shouldn't be. And through all of this, he kept growing. By now, Toothless wasn't cat-sized anymore. He was closer to a medium-sized dog. His wings had grown larger, his tail was longer, and his strength was clearly increasing. So it was time to introduce him to the outside world. The first place I took him was the park. I wanted to see how he'd react to open space, grass, trees, and fresh air. He loved it. He ran around, flapped his wings, and immediately tried chasing birds that were way faster than him. He also accidentally scared a few people, but overall it went pretty well. That gave me confidence, probably way too much confidence, because the next place I took him was a shopping mall. This was a mistake. The moment we walked in, people stopped. Phones came out instantly. Crowds formed. Some thought he was a robot. Others thought he was CGI. And a few kids thought he was the coolest thing they'd ever seen. Toothless loved the attention. He posed. He walked around like he owned the place, and he may or may not have knocked over a few displays with his tail. By the time we left, one thing was clear. Toothless was no longer a normal pet. He barely fit in his bed anymore. He took up way too much space in the house, and his wings were constantly bumping into everything. So I tried something calmer. I took him to the beach. This was Toothless's first time seeing the ocean, and he was completely fascinated. He walked along the shoreline, watched the waves, and eventually stepped into the water. Surprisingly, he figured out how to swim really fast. But even at the beach, people started noticing him, and Toothless kept getting bigger every single day. That's when it became obvious. He was outgrowing a normal life. He barely fit through doorways anymore. His tail knocked things over even when he tried to be careful. And when he stretched his wings, the entire room felt too small. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't trying to destroy anything. He was just growing. And that's when I realized something I had been avoiding. Toothless didn't need more rules. He needed more space. So, for the next stage of his life, I made a difficult decision. I sent Toothless to the zoo. The idea was simple. He would live among other large animals. He would have space to move, space to run, and space to grow without destroying the house. At first, he was cautious. He didn't rush into his enclosure. He didn't roar. He just stood there watching, listening, and learning. The zoo reacted instantly. Animals that were usually loud went silent. Monkeys stopped screaming. Birds stopped flapping. Predators froze. Then came the first challenge. A lion approached the edge of its enclosure. Slow steps, low growls, and locked eyes. The lion had never backed down from anything, but Toothless didn't move. He didn't bare his teeth. He didn't spread his wings. He just stood still. And when the lion got closer, Toothless took one single step forward. That was enough. The lion stopped. Next came the tigers. Faster, more aggressive, and used to intimidation. They circled, growling louder. Toothless responded differently. He slowly unfolded one wing, just slightly, enough to show scale and shift the balance. The growling stopped. Then came the bears. Massive, overwhelming strength. One of them stood up and roared. Toothless didn't roar back immediately. He waited. Then he released a deep, controlled growl. Not loud, not explosive, just heavy. The kind of sound you feel in your chest. The bear dropped back down. From that moment, everything changed. Toothless wasn't a new attraction. He wasn't just another animal. He was the apex. Wherever he walked, animals moved away. Wherever he stood, silence followed. But dominance has consequences, people noticed. More visitors came. Cameras never stopped flashing. News crews arrived. Toothless became the main event. At first, he tolerated it. He even seemed curious, but day after day, the noise never stopped. There was no quiet, no privacy, and no moment when he wasn't being watched. Even at night, lights flickered near his enclosure. He stopped sleeping deeply. He began pacing. He started looking up at the sky for long periods of time, like he was remembering something he'd never had. Freedom. At first, he endured it. Then he became restless, then frustrated. And one night, something broke. It started small. A low growl, not violent, just tired. The glass vibrated. Animals panicked. Zookeepers shouted. Visitors screamed. Toothless stepped back, then forward, and spread his wings fully. For the first time, the enclosure wasn't built for that. Dust fell, metal creaked. One powerful movement. One massive wing beat, and the structure cracked. Another wing beat, then another. The sound echoed across the entire zoo. Animals roared. Birds exploded into the air. People ran. Then it happened. The wall gave way. Concrete fractured. Glass burst outward. And Toothless was free. Dust filled the air. Silence followed. Then he crouched, spread his wings, and launched. The ground shook. Debris scattered. Air was ripped apart as Toothless rose into the sky, higher than he had ever been allowed to go, higher than the zoo, and higher than the city skyline. For the first time in his life, there were no walls, no glass, and no barriers. Just sky. He didn't attack. He didn't destroy. He simply flew. Over buildings where people stopped and stared. Over highways where cars pulled over. Over the ocean where his shadow reflected on the water. And the higher he climbed, the smaller everything else became. He wasn't a pet. He wasn't an exhibit. He wasn't something meant to be controlled. He was exactly what he was always meant to be. A dragon, free. And somewhere above the clouds, a creature humans tried to raise as a pet now rules the sky. If you enjoyed this video and want more adventures with incredible creatures, make sure to subscribe to Carlos AI channel, hit the like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next.